Content warning, this video is going to contain discussion of sexual assault, sexual harassment, and of course, transphobia, because gotta throw that one in there as a fun little extra. It would be nice to occasionally get to make videos where I didn't have to throw in content warnings about those three things in particular. Activision-Blizzard is a nightmare company that makes video games like Call of Duty and World of Warcraft and shit, where female employees are routinely harassed, assaulted, and made to feel unsafe. The company, allegedly, held events called cube crawls, where male employees were encouraged to get drunk and grope female employees. Women are expected to work harder and longer than their male counterparts, and are compensated worse both with regards to pay and promotions. Allegedly. Allegedly, allegedly, allegedly. Though at this point, I don't think anyone's gonna stick their necks out to defend the company with the whole reveal of the Cosby rooms, where they'd hang a big picture of Bill Cosby and have a bunch of alcohol ready to go. You know, it's a fun little joke, like about how Cosby would drug and rape women by putting Quaaludes in their drinks. Allegedly. Whew, sounds bad when you put it that way, but don't worry, it's all just a reference to the quirky patterns on the wallpaper being like Bill Cosby sweaters. Just look at the wallpaper, like in this photo, or this one. Yup, story checks out to me. Another image from the same Facebook album shows a screenshot of a 2013 group chat called the BlizzCon Cosby Crew. In it, former Blizzard designer David Kosak writes, "I am gathering the hot chicks for the cause." "Bring 'em," replied Afrosayabi. "You can't marry all of them, Alex," Kosak writes. "I can, I'm Middle Eastern," responds Afrosayabi. Jesse McCree, currently a lead game developer at Blizzard, then writes, "You misspelled fuck." As you can see, everything's on the up and up over at Activision-Blizzard. So AB was sued by the California Department of Fair Employment for creating a hostile work environment for women specifically. Please keep that in mind, that the suit is not simply that Activision-Blizzard is bad, but that it is specifically bad for women, because that will be important later. It also specifically mentions women of color, saying they are especially mistreated with micromanaging and being promoted later than their white or male peers. It specifically mentions these two groups, women and women of color, who are a subcategory of women. In solidarity, a group of Activision-Blizzard employees drafted a petition that garnered at least 2,000 signatures and staged a walkout that is still ongoing. Into this situation bumbles Chen, a conservative dipshit who views this not as a problem of sexual harassment or assault, not a corporate culture which tacitly allowed this behavior to continue, but rather just woke lords being too woke about their wokeism. Woke.
The employees at Activision-Blizzard have a lot of legitimate complaints and legitimate grievances, and they could have had the opportunity to improve working conditions for everybody. This, at least, group of employees, I don't know how big they are, has instead chosen to redirect the conversation specifically to diversity, equity, and inclusion for trans, PC, or why would you do that? Why would you purposefully alienate some of the people who may have otherwise supported you?
These fucking feminists, let me tell you, they're out there making everything about women. Like, why you gotta focus on women? Because it's obviously a bad environment for men too. Probably.
But now the state of California is actually suing them for alleged discrimination against female employees, specifically because, as we all know, in 2021, you can do whatever to men, doesn't matter, but you dare harm a woman, that's when you get in trouble.
See, here's the thing. These woke little babies could have stood up for everybody. They could have stood up for all of the employees. For some reason, they made this all about women and women of color and other privileged groups.
And I think a running theme throughout these demands, as we will see, is that despite Activision despite them allegedly not being a great employer to any of their employees, men, women, black, white, you name it, it seems like this group of employees has tried to co-opt the employee walkout in this whole general movement in order to focus specifically on the typical protected, elevated, progressive groups like trans, disabled, lesbian, sex workers of color.
Now, Lauren, I would actually argue that women of color or gender non-conforming women being held back and not promoted or paid as fairly as their colleagues is actually evidence that they're not elevated and protected, actually. That in fact, the reason progressives talk so much about these groups isn't because they're special little snowflakes and they just like them, but You know, because the mission of creating equality requires that you first examine the ways that people are treated unequally, who is treated unequally, and then address those problems. But Lauren, of course, front-loads her position by saying she doesn't put a lot of stock in claims of discriminatory differences in pay or hiring or promoting.
If you watch my videos, you'll know that generally I don't place much stock in the idea that women are paid less than men just for being women. It has nothing to do with, I don't know, experience, hours worked, education, or anything like that. I think if that were the case, then why would companies not just hire all women and save a bunch of money? Maybe it's because they would rather spend more money, but at least have men rather than employ women. But
okay, let's think that through, Lauren. If it's not actually about internal bias, but rather women lacking experience, why is it, do you think, that women lack experience, Lauren? Kinda weird, don't you think, if there's no hiring discrimination against women, that women applying for jobs in the same industry routinely lack the experience of their male counterparts? How did that happen? Are women just naturally worse at making video games? Or could it be that they've had some opportunities withheld from them? Like, for example, Lauren, one thing that might look like an example of that might be if, for example, supervisors ignored medical restrictions given to female employees and gave them negative evaluations while they were out on maternity leave. Or other female employees being criticized for leaving to pick up their children from daycare while their male counterparts were playing video games, or female employees being kicked out of lactation rooms so employees could use the room for meetings. Do you see how that would be an example of women missing opportunities because it kind of hurts their career to get pregnant? Oh, whoops, oh dang, I forgot. I wasn't speaking off the dome. I was actually quoting a Kotaku article about the ways that Activision-Blizzard was monitoring and systematically disadvantaging pregnant women. Maybe. Women are choosing not to work in the game industry for their own reasons. Maybe it's not a hiring bias, but women choosing not to want to work in video games because of their eggs, because of bio-truths, perhaps. But also, maybe also, part of the reason women do not want to work in the games industry is the aforementioned harassment they're forced to endure when they do. But it's all just these wokes woking it up. They're just trying to make this about something it isn't, as though this was a controversy about discrimination against women, and not just a vague statement about how the company is shitty to work for everyone, in a way that I cannot explain for reasons that I will not give.
There's this really weird push here to tie in not being harassed to more diversity, inclusion, and equity, when really they are not the same thing. Harassment is something that HR departments have been focused on for really decades and generations, and it's something that can happen to women and men.
Indeed. How very weird. Why are they trying to tie harassment and diversity together? Let's really noodle this one out. Why would they possibly do that? Well, here's a couple reasons they might. First of all, there are multiple complaints against the company, one of which being that they pay women worse than men and pay women of color significantly worse than white peers. That they don't promote women, or women of color in particular, as readily as they do men. So I don't really know how you fix the problem of your workplace deliberately stifling diversity without increasing diversity. Secondly, one way that those two things might be tied is that women might be less tolerant of a culture of sexual harassment than leadership exclusively comprised of men. I would think that that is common sense. But no, you see, there's actually a sinister motive behind all of this.
Diversity, equity, and inclusion, however, is a political and ideological initiative that really just seeks to artificially elevate people who are not white, cis, straight males into roles that maybe they are not qualified for.
The wokes, for no other reason than pure malevolence, wanted to raise up women and people of color and transes to positions they are naturally incapable of holding. Any attempt to bring them to some sort of parity must mean that you're unfairly disadvantaging the natural victors of society, the inherently superior straight white men. If straight white men have an advantage, that's normal. They probably just have more experience is the only reason. But if you try to give an advantage to someone else, that's wrong. You're building them up artificially. I have no idea why Lauren chose to talk about this subject, because she is very clearly trying very hard not to talk about this subject. She has all these weird little asides that don't relate at all to what she's talking about, but she presents them as though they invalidate the workers' demands. She talks about how if the video game industry is so sexist, why would you want to get involved with it?
If the gaming industry really is sexist in that the workplace culture, the people developing the games are sexist, and also the games themselves are sexist because they objectify women or whatever, why do these activists insist on inserting themselves into an industry that apparently is so awful, so toxic, and so hateful? Like, it just doesn't really make sense. Like, if you don't like the product, you don't like the people who are making the product, then maybe the product isn't for you.
And like, what the fuck are you talking about? Just because an industry has toxic elements, it doesn't mean that every aspect of it and everything which it produces is by necessity toxic. It's not a contradiction to say, I like video games, but I don't like the way that the video games industry treats women. Why would it be? If conservatives view the media as so thoroughly left-wing because of their broken brains, why do they want to get involved in the media? Do you see how ridiculous that sounds? Should we just accept it as normal that women are forced out of certain industries because those industries have sexist working conditions? Nobody at the job interview was like, hey, just so you know, here at this company, here at Activision-Blizzard, we're very sexist. Are you okay with that? There is a reasonable expectation that if you're going to work for a company, that you shouldn't have to put up with being harassed or groped at work. They didn't walk into the job knowing in advance that this would be the case. Or when she responds to TikToks about how the gaming industry is a hostile work environment for women or people of color. You see, she points out that she's able to buy video games whenever she wants.
I mean, I do remember as an Asian woman, one time I tried to buy a video game and they just wouldn't sell it to me. They were like, no, you're the wrong gender, you're the wrong race, you can't have this. And it was just, it was very sad, but apparently that's a feature of the gaming industry. But
nobody is saying that women of color are being stopped from buying video games. What the fuck are you talking about, you little weirdo? The point is about working in the games industry, not whether or not they'll take your money. But also, like, hey Lauren, walk into a video game shop sometime, spend a little time there, see how you get treated. Because I don't know a single woman who plays video games that hasn't been harassed at a video game shop or a gaming convention, or just like at a party around video games, or in the lobby of a video game, usually all of them. Here's a fun experiment you can try, Lauren. Join a public match in literally any game, and let the players hear your voice. Come back and let me know whether or not you were made to feel welcome. Not only is the point you are making completely irrelevant, it's also patently absurd to anyone familiar with video game culture and its attitude towards women. That pervasive culture of harassment will infect any space where it is not immediately and strictly prohibited. Or like when she goes off on a rant about how she would fire the dudes she sees holding signs that decry sexism in the workplace.
Employees are pictured holding signs like "Nerf male privilege" and "Believe women," as well as "Send the frat boys back to school." If I were Blizzard and I were in charge of hiring and firing and I was looking at all these different people, not only holding signs like this, but also making demands that I be more equitable in my hiring practice, honestly, I would fire them all. I would just clean the ranks and bring in people who literally just wanted to make video games.
So let me just make sure I'm understanding you here. You see the problem in this image is the guys holding signs saying that women should not be harassed or assaulted at their place of work. When you look over what is disrupting the video game making process over at Activision-Blizzard, to you, that's these guys. They ought to lose their jobs even. That'd make things better. It'd make things better at the company where women are being harassed and groped if you fired the people talking about it, is what you are saying now on YouTube.com. And do I have that right, Lauren? Is that what you are saying? Feels like the only reason she's even talking about this is to weaponize knee-jerk anti-wokeness to delegitimize a workplace action designed to force a big corporation to fix just one of the myriad ways it mistreats its workforce. There couldn't be a more cut and dry case of a toxic work environment than this, and most people who hear this story will be rightly outraged at the ways this company treats its workers. She has to pretend it's all silly wokeness coming from nowhere for no reason because her audience is primed to dislike that. She can't meaningfully engage in the topic because obviously, in this instance, the people she would call woke are correct. This is a toxic work environment for women and women of color in particular. She has to pretend like that is somehow divorced from the substantive complaints that the obviously terrible things happening to women at Activision-Blizzard are somehow unrelated to women being mistreated in the workplace. That women being mistreated and harassed, paid less, and held back from promotion is somehow equally bad for men. Because otherwise, this story serves as evidence of how her entire worldview and everything she preaches to her audience is bullshit. The best she can do when faced with evidence of her complete wrongness is insist that that evidence is evidence that none of this is happening. And I should also note that this serves as a perfect example of the false dichotomy between identity politics and class consciousness. Lauren is directly using the supposed frivolity of identity politics to dismantle a worker action, to make life more difficult and dangerous for working people. Dismantling patriarchy, dismantling cis heteronormativity, dismantling white supremacy. These are workers' issues. It's not just shit that affects you at the beach. When you're at the beach, for example, of a place where those things might affect you. It's also a huge problem at work. It gives people less agency over their workplace, less control over their jobs and what they make and how they make it. In conclusion, eat my farts, both Lauren Chen and class reductionists. And now, a word from the Eyeball Zone. Hello and welcome to the Eyeball Zone. Hey, have you ever noticed that there's not a lot of LGBTQ plus representation in children's media because people just kind of inherently assume it's unsafe for children to view it? Like if they see a gay person, that they're gonna catch gay from it. You're gonna catch gay from seeing a gay. That's pretty fucked up, don't you think? And it's pretty good that that's changing just a little bit, but not nearly fast enough, and kind of only for queer women, because queer men are still treated like they're too dangerous. Anyway, if you want to see a video about that's a thoughtful examination of how that happened historically, you can look over this one from Night Owls about LGBTQ plus representation in children's media, which is a video essay about that, and it talks about all your favorite cartoons. They got She-Ra, the Owl House, because they're night owls. That's probably one of the main reasons they talked about that show, aside from its relevance to the topic. Hey, what's your deal? You got a small leftist project you want to see featured here on the Eyeball Zone? Okay, well, obviously what you do there is you send exactly one email to me at thoughtslimeditor@gmail.com with the word eyeball somewhere in the subject line and pertinent details like your pronouns, and even you can find yourself trapped here in the Eyeball Zone. Don't buy Activision-Blizzard games while they're on strike. That's my song about the walkout and how I don't know if it was really a strike, but you don't buy their games right now. Hey, if you like that video and all of the cool stuff I'm doing here on YouTube, like it and subscribe to me and give me money on patreon.com/thoughtslime. But also, another YouTube channel I do is Scaredy Cats at youtube.com/scaredycatstv. Every Tuesday I got a video about horror movies. Right now I'm doing the Fear Street movies from Netflix. Want to see what a grown adult has to say about that? Go check it out. Hey, also I stream every Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Forget about it. Fix your company, Blizz.